Hello and welcome to Bodied, a Cloud9 fancast, where we talk about Cloud9 stuff and say things. I'm your host Havokpus, and I'm joined by Frozencreek and Dr. Manhattan.
What's up?
Hey, what goes on, listeners?
I wasn't here last week because of work.
We had an episode, and I think it kind of worked out with just the two of us. It was weird doing the intro all by myself, though. So I'm glad you're back because it also took me 2 takes.
See, I did it in one take. I'm
Wink,
superior.
wink, nudge, nudge.
Well, let's get started. We have a little bit of not actually a whole lot went on today, but we do have some stuff that I'm going to mention before we really dive deep into it. So, a bunch of the Cloud9 Fortnite people were at the PAX, I think it's PAX West event. They were at one of the PAXs, and Blind ended up getting sixth place, which is pretty good considering there were like I think a millions billions Fortnite players there. And that's all that happened at PAX. Nothing controversial happened. Nothing silly or weird happened. It was Fortnite, and that was it. um.
That was the only thing that happened at that conference. Obviously, no
Yes.
controversy or anything that we're going to touch on. But did anybody get a chance to watch any of the Fortnite?
I wasn't able to, sadly. I heard at one point the game was taking too long to finish, so I think they just like turned the gravity off, and then everyone just started kind of like floating in the air.
Yeah, that's what happened. I think it was like in like the
That's what I
third
like
or
to hear.
fourth game. Is like I think the zone was going into like a zero gravity zone, and like it was legit like just a bunch of people just floating in the air trying to shoot each other or trying to build a fort to at least close themselves in so that they wouldn't get boxed in. It was really odd, and I'm not too much of a I don't really play too much Fortnite to understand why that happened. I think it was just an unlucky I think it was just an unlucky zone that closed in. But I did get to watch most of it. It was actually done quite well.
Yeah, I heard they at least handled the event well, and hopefully, Epic will get better as they start doing more and more of these little events to slowly burn away that huge cash pool that they have saved up for Fortnite events.
Yeah, I think right now they're trying to just kind of take like the startup route, and that's not really so much just say hey we're here with esports. So right now they're just trying to get like the water tested and just kind of have a few competitors out there. I mean, the guy that like I kid you not, the guy that won the entire thing like barely had 100 followers on Twitter, and his entire following now is like exploded because like it was just like some random dude.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was actually pretty. It was actually pretty crazy. At least it's like how long they'll manage to like to ride this wave again. Who knows? But it's actually pretty interesting, and it was cool to see some of the Fortnite guys out there. Actually, I think there was a random clip that somebody got off Twitch of one of the C9 players, Shivzy, or I forget who it was, but he's randomly just doing a backflip, like
Yeah,
right kind of on camera.
that's Keo. He is a recently signed streamer, and
Uh,
he is known for. I think every time he gets like a subscriber, he does a backflip.
that's
That's
actually
that's like
that's
his thing.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's actually pretty funny. Like I just saw like Cloud9 tweeted it out. I was like, wait, what the hell? Like some random dude in a C9 jersey just doing a backflip. That's pretty cool.
Wait, like
Yeah,
a
they got some
person like
really nice
on
scary
camera
shots.
doing a backflip?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Like a person on camera doing a backflip, not like
Yeah,
in the game.
they were like no, it was in person. Like they were they were using like this drone, like this camera drone, so it had this really nice kind of sweeping aerial shot. And as it was kind of going over the crowd, you just see Keo kind of like coming in a frame, and then I guess someone tells him like, "Hey, you're on camera." So then he does a backflip.
it's actually pretty.
Okay, that's pretty high.
Yeah, it was on the Cloud9 Twitter. So like you can just zoom down like just barely, and you'll see it. It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
That's the best part about the early stages of an esport is that like anything can happen,
Yeah, for sure.
and
Yeah,
that's just proof.
definitely.
Well, let's move on. Just a tiny quick little tidbit of news. Frolicer or Frolicker, however you pronounce it. I've always said Frolicker, but him and C9 have parted ways. He was on, I believe, the PUBG team, and he was moved to the bench. I guess the chemistry wasn't working with the roster, and they signed two new players recently, so they're like, well, you're gonna have to sit on the bench, and stuff happens, and yeah. But it seemed like a pretty mutual parting, so I don't think he seemed too upset by it. So hopefully he'll find a team to represent soon.
Yeah, I think that some people have. I mean, one of the fact that he got benched kind of was just to kind of set like a small ticking time alarm. But I mean, you got to remember these guys went with a new roster, or not a completely new roster, but they went without Frolicker into the Hong Kong PUBG World Invitational, which Cloud9 won. So that kind of rang the alarm. Like, yeah, I'm not sure if I have much of a future here because these guys are doing pretty well. I think they've done like maybe one or two other like invitationals, but I mean the
They
fact that
were at
they,
the Star Ladder series, but I'm not sure. I don't know how well they did.
oh yeah, I don't know about that. But I mean, hell, if you see your team kind of just winning without you, it's kind of like a do I really have much of a future here? And the fact that it was mutual and that Frolicker was pretty mature about it, that's definitely pretty. At least there's that. So I mean, best of luck to Frolicker with whatever he does in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, we're going to move on to our first big story, and that is London Spitfire has signed a new head coach. His sort of gamer name is 813. I believe his real name is Kwanbok Kim, and he might this is a name that you don't really recognize until you realize that he was a huge presence in other Blizzard esports. He was like a StarCraft coach when StarCraft was just becoming a thing. He was a Heroes of the Storm coach, and then he was an Overwatch coach for a brief period of time. In his career, he has, I think, gotten like maybe 8 first place finishes and like 7 second place finishes, which is pretty insane. And this isn't Overwatch related, but it proves that as a coach, he is really good. And his most recent team, which is Overwatch, was MVP Space. That team got like 6th place, I think, in the most recent Korea contenders. But Monte Cristo actually does a really nice video sort of explaining why this is a really, really good pickup and why he's going to be a great coach. And it's because previous success within various different esports, as well as MVP Space, actually didn't have that big of a talent pool. MVP was, I think, one of those teams that they're not looking to splurge a lot of money. They're not. They're kind of on the light side in terms of money. So they'll look more into the latter and just try to like mold raw young talent, and try to build the best roster that they can. And considering it's actually funny because he goes into the history of MVP Space, and really the only reason why they've gotten so results is basically every time they get to the bracket part of a tournament, they get knocked out by runaways. So you don't really know how well they would have done because they kept getting beaten by runaways.
Yeah, and I think that Monte Cristo is a really good video in terms of explaining the whole 815 thing, and along with actually one thing I kind of somewhat understood, but he does a better job at explaining how like Korean infrastructure is in terms of how coaching is as compared to like what we would think as a traditional coach, which I actually found very interesting. Actually, also I think he mentioned when he talked about MVP's time on Heroes of the Storm, he actually worked with one of the coaches that's currently in London. I think he's mentioned Agape, who is also another analyst and coach on the London Spitfire. So I mean, that's probably someone who like definitely gave him, at least the fact that they have some sort of amicable relationship in that sense, definitely rubs me the right way. On top of the fact that again, what London needed for most of like the second half of like the Overwatch season was just structure, and that's what a head coach like 815 decides to offer. And I think that Monty said even when he was in League of Legends, he was one of the main de factos in what was the MVP Ozone era of Korea back in like what season 3, season 2. And if you guys don't know about MVP Ozone, they would later end up being Samsung's blue and white, which would are arguably, if not, they are probably the most dominant teams in League of Legends history. So if there's one person who know, and you gotta remember, he signed like guys like Imp and Mata when no one even knew who the hell they were. So I definitely trust this guy.
Yeah, I think his storied career of success in multiple different games speaks volumes to just his ability to be a very good coach. And with the London Spitfire, he actually has grade A talent instead of more of the bargain bin talent that you get from just getting good solo queue players. So I think we're going to be right as rain. He seems to be pretty enthusiastic. I think the other coaches are, and everyone on Spitfire is excited as well. Also, there's a rumor that Ado, who previously was on Shanghai Dragons and was cut from them, will be going to Spitfire because 815 also coached Ado, and I think he also coached Closer. So,
That's correct.
yeah, so, it kind of makes sense. And Ado was like one of the few good players on Shanghai. And, and the reason why Shanghai just didn't work was because they had a lot of communication errors, and I think their roster maybe just wasn't filled with a lot of good talent. There were so many threads in Overwatch subreddits talking about how they've skimmed over much more talented Chinese teams for the roster that they chose, and there was a lot of murky feelings about like, well, this seems kind of corrupted, and it might not totally be on the up and up on why they chose this team. But I wouldn't be upset if we got Ado. We definitely need a DPS support because of Birdring's glass-like wrists.
I agree. I think that Ada would be a well addition. The fact that Birdring is playing, with his wrists that have a condition, on top of the fact that he's playing a essentially a character that basically is going to not make that any better, considering we've seen some of his Widow play, which, Jesus, I can feel that in my wrists. But the fact that he has an amicable relationship again with 815 is definitely going to be huge. Especially because when you really consider, again, going back to the whole culture thing, when you really consider how like Korean infrastructure and coaching works in terms of how they see it, when a coach definitely gains the trust of a player, it's like for life. Even after like they can split, it's just the way that like Korean structure is. I think that's what Loco Doko on an episode like Narrative Wake or something that he's saying was explaining how it works. But yeah, if we get Ado, that'd be huge. It would add more flexibility in terms of how we can use Birdring in the case of like maybe Widow doesn't become the best character. I don't doubt that Birdring has the potential to learn a new character. He's still young.
I mean, Birdring can play Tracer and Genji,
Yeah,
and I think I think Ada would only be used as a sub if Birdring gets hurt, or they want to let Prophet play sort of the Tracer Genji role and have Ado play more projectile, because Birdring can play a lot of. His champion pool is certainly not as deep as Prophet's, because Prophet's is basically an ocean.
there's nothing Prophet can't play. I mean, he's
Exactly.
broken out like Brigitte at this point. Like there's really
Yeah.
no, I don't doubt the boy, but I don't want to put that much pressure on him in that sense where it's like, yep, well, guess I got to put on my big boy pants. But
Yeah,
like,
I don't think there's any question that Prophet Birdring would not always be sort of the default starting DPS duo, but I think there could be situations where you would need Edo in place of Birdring, and I do like sort of just the sense of redundancy in we have a couple players in roles just in case someone gets sick or hurt.
yeah, absolutely. And to kind of put a capper on it, I'm gonna keep my eye out close on some of these rumors, but the fact that I've hit F5 on London and the fact that we haven't cut anybody too significant, already getting an A+ in my book.
Exactly. And some of the other teams are cutting like making massive cuts. I know like Shanghai got rid of almost everyone. Florida got rid of almost anyone.
Yeah, just like an hour or two ago, Florida just got rid of like everyone.
Yeah.
They're cleaning house.
But that also makes a good transition over, just real quick talking about the new Overwatch League teams. So for season 2, we're going to have Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Toronto, Vancouver, Paris, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, and Chengdu. The last 3 are all located in China. And I find that really interesting. I personally like having a team in Atlanta. I think that the southern United States gets severely overlooked in terms of esports, so to at least have one team in, the South, I don't really count Florida. Um, Unless it's like North Florida, that saying like the farther you go north, the more south you get. But anyway, just to have like at least one team from the South is good because the South always gets overlooked, and I think there is it's not super prominent, but I think there is a very nice sort of underground esports community that you can really bring out.
Yeah, and as a resident person of the DC, Maryland, Virginia metropolitan area, I can definitely see that a lot of people are excited that we're gonna get a team here. Um, yeah, there's definitely in the past like year in DC like this huge underground culture of esports that's slowly but surely been bringing out. Actually, fun fact: one of the event organizers in like Washington DC, who's in charge of a lot of stuff, they're a company known as Events DC. They actually sponsor NRG, who are guess what, they have an Overwatch team. So it seemed like it was only a matter of like maybe a year or two. I'm surprised that they did it so soon, but to see it here in Washington D.C., a city that is hugely thrived on sports, even though maybe the sports don't love us in terms of results, not including the Stanley Cup, but definitely excited for here in D.C. Even though at heart I'll always be with London.
Yeah, for sure. I guess also looking over the rest of the list, having a couple of teams in Canada, that's cool. I'm a little disappointed there's only one other European team. I was hoping to see like Berlin as another team to be added this season, but hopefully by like season 3 or 4 we actually have a plethora of European teams, so it's not just literally like 4 teams or something and it's super small.
Yeah.
In China makes sense just because China's a huge market and you have to kind of bend the knee to just the population and how big, how large the country is and how many people are there and consume media. So all these choices I think are good.
I agree. Yeah, I would have loved another European team. I remember hearing murmurs of like Berlin. I heard some murmurs of Moscow.
Some also said Madrid.
Yeah, I heard murmurs
That
of
would be
that.
lit.
If I'm willing to bet my money, if it would go to Madrid, I'm willing to bet my money it'd probably go to like G2 or something like that. But there's definitely teams you can work with that are already endemic in the space. You got teams like Dignitas is a UK based team. You got, I'm trying to think of, Vitality's French based. Yeah, you got tons to work with. So maybe in the future we'll see more European teams.
Yeah, I hope so. Frozen, do you have any comments? You're a little quiet as we rambled on and on about Overwatch.
I was trying to chime in. Just basically about the new teams. I mostly just wanted to say that I think it's awesome that they're expanding. A newsletter that I follow every day of a guy who used to work for 538. If you don't know what that is, they're mostly like political polling and stuff, but they also do a lot of statistics-based analysis for sports and such. He doesn't work there anymore, but he does a newsletter every day, and I think it was today for the second or third time he brought up Overwatch League over pretty much any other esport. Maybe he brought up Dota once over the international, but I think it just kind of goes to show that it actually is kind of a big deal. So I'm glad to see that more teams are buying in. And I really would like to see a Midwestern team, though. If there was one, it would be in Chicago, and I cannot support a Chicago team. So I think
That's
it
fair.
would.
That's fair.
Yeah,
A lot of people were clamoring for Chicago. When I was keeping track of it, when people were trying to figure out who the expansion teams were, a lot of people were wanting to see Chicago.
Yeah, and I would love to see somebody make a case for Detroit. What's the organization that Monty was a part of in League of Legends that got banned?
Renegades.
Renegades. They're
Yes.
quote unquote based in Detroit, so like that would kind of be a cool little gig. And we have the Ford family. We have Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans.
I'm gonna say you got 100 Thieves that could do something with there. You know, if they decide to ever get into Overwatch, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, I'm not saying it's gonna be the option, but it's definitely an option.
Yeah. So yeah. So I would love to make a case for Detroit, but I know that Detroit and Chicago don't always get along when it comes to sports. So it will be tough choosing between the two. And until there is actually a Detroit team, I don't think I can give anybody my secondary support. So, but I just think it'd be sweet to see someone in the Midwest.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I hate to cut off this riveting discussion, but we need to move on. So let's talk about League. Pretty much what the show is basically based on. First and foremost, Reapered and Blaber got Coach and Rookie of the Split, respectively. Do you two agree or disagree with this? Personally, I think this has been the right choice. The Rookie of the Split is kind of a no-brainer since it's either Blaber, Zazel, or I think maybe Lost.
Actually, he didn't. He wasn't eligible. The third person who was eligible, I think, was actually Wiggly.
Oh, right. And Wiggly only played like 2 games?
Yeah, so I don't think it's really fair.
Okay, so scratch Rookie of the Split. Head coach, do you think that Reaper deserved Coach of the Split?
I'll kick this off. Yeah, I think he definitely. I think he did. And usually, actually, I was live streaming, just asking people, like, trying to make like a devil's advocate case for Saint, who was like my second pick. Taking a team that didn't even make playoffs and turn them into actually one of the top teams at one point, actually. You know, and the fact that he did that with a new, relatively new support. He played a few games last split, and JJ going in academy. Santorin just completely looked unidentifiable from his journeyman days on NRG and H2K, like post TSM. This guy was pretty much irrelevant, just feeding off the challenger teams. Keen was pretty solid. Flame, we all know, was Flame even when FlyQuest wasn't doing so hot. Last split, Flame was there was a case where people were saying Flame is a top 3 top laner in the NALCS. But even with all of that, I still think that Reaper definitely showed what it's like to actually be a coach in the sense of the way that most people think of Korean coaches, where it's like, you know, demanding a lot of respect for players, definitely having the courage to essentially bench his star players in favor of what he thought would work out better in the long term. And no one was popular with that choice. People were confused. Some players in the LCS were like, wait, what the hell? Like, okay. The fans definitely did not have that. And I like what Reaper said during his interview with Ovly when he got the coach of the split. He's like, yeah, it's nice that I won coach, but don't forget, I also took this team into last place too. So, like, I definitely have that power. So, I mean, I'm not perfect, but even with as many devil advocate arguments I try to make, almost everything was just like, I'd still have to pick Reaper like 5 times out of like 10.
Yeah, I think you can make arguments for Saint and maybe even TL's coach just because they won first place. But I think at the end of the day, like, Reaper was the only one who actually tried something new and stuck to his guns, and it even worked out. So I think you almost kind of have to give it to him just based off of that and the fact that he was so innovative with forming a seven person lineup and working with the Academy team to give NALCS something that we haven't seen before in such a dramatic fashion. So I think you can make an argument for the other people, but I think I would give a Reaper just a small edge on it. But I don't think I would have been mad if anybody else had won it. And I maybe would have put somebody else as the quote unquote favorite, but like not by really anything noticeable. Like it would have been maybe like instead of like a 50% chance, it would have been like a 49 or 48% chance. So I'm not upset with how it ended up turning out. I'm glad that we won it. So
yeah, I think he definitely deserved it just because he utilized Academy exactly how it was intended to be utilized. You know, it was there to have players that maybe have fallen off a bit to practice back up, It's to utilize talent in all of its facets. Even if that ends up losing games, you at least know you are figuring out what is working and slowly but surely improving the team in time for playoffs. And no other team really has done this yet. 100 Thieves kind of did it with Rikara, but that was just a shameful, poorly timed decision that I think was just on the heels of, well, Cloud9 did it. We can do it too. Look, we're we're different. We're
Yeah, it
innovative.
doesn't work like that,
It
unfortunately.
doesn't
Sorry,
work like
bro.
that.
Yeah, and one thing I will also say on the Reapered thing is, I mean, he's been getting a lot of praise even outside of like the scope of like just some of his. I mean, I think I heard an interview with Zabutin, on a Talk to Thorin, where he's basically talking about, how he genuinely feels like Reapered is just on another level when it comes to a lot of coaches that he hasn't seen. And Zabutin, if you guys don't know, is the coach of Optic, and I think he even got props from the general manager from Optic, Romain Beguierd, who liked his approach towards the benching of his players, not giving them talent, because there's been times in the past in the NALCS, and I think QtPie even confirmed it on Beyond the Rift, where he back when QtPie was playing for Dig, there was coaches who would like try to bluff and say, yeah, I'm benching you if you don't perform, and players are like, oh yeah, good fucking luck, dude. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, bench me? Like, I'm your best player. But Reaper said, you know what? Like, I got other players. I have other cards here, so don't act like this spot is definitely earned. And even then, with all of that, he still had the humility to, again, that quote to me should be ingrained. Is just, don't forget, this team was in last place under me too, so definitely not perfect. Also, fun fact: he's the only coach in the NALCS to win the Coach of the Split twice.
Oh, well, there you go. So, with the deserving awards being doled out, Cloud9 then faced off against their bitter rivals, the people that we just want to beat the most.
Oh, the Alabama to Auburn,
Hey, 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 hey.
Ohio State to Michigan,
Okay, that's better.
the Michigan State to Michigan, the Notre Dame to Michigan. All I have is Big Ten rivals.
There's so much Michigan.
I mean, I'm from the Big Ten. I would have loved to see a kick 6 year, but that's all I got.
Okay, well, thank you for the football reference, Rose. So this series was great. This series was basically
Indiana to Purdue.
okay. Anyway, this series was great. Like, it felt like a final in terms of just the tension and the suspense. I think like every game, I was nervous and on the edge of my seat, wondering how it would unfold. And it was a really interesting performance. Personally, I think that we won 3-2, but personally, I think we could have won like 3-0 or maybe 3-1 if we hadn't picked low damage comps in games 1 and 3. Because we drafted Quinn, which got nerfs and seems to be more utilized for split pushing than all out team fights, which TSM wanted to do a lot, and the comps that C9 were drafting didn't really want to do that. So I think that you saw like night and day with like Sneaky on Quinn versus not on Quinn. When he was on Varus and Kaisa, he was destroying everybody. And like it was like not even funny how much he was just doing work. Versus when he was on a Quinn, he wasn't really that helpful because he could get a large chunk of damage in, but he's not finishing off the kill, and that just causes more problems later as the fight goes on.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, I think the Quinn pick was kind of as a way to control the map and push down turrets. But I think Reapered and the team kind of realized as the series went on that they could kind of control the map and just push down turrets for free, even without having like that, not semi global, but maybe a pseudo global ultimate out of Quinn, and they did a damn good job of controlling the waves and pushing down turrets for free. That is probably the major thing that has lost Cloud9 big games in playoffs to TSM before. So to see him kind of flip the script and just take shit for free was probably the biggest biggest thing I've seen this team change. So that I would like to give the biggest props for is all the free turrets that we took for no reason.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one thing that is kind of seeing its shadow of itself again is Sneaky's team fighting style, in the sense where he's definitely good in collective. If you can give him a champion that, excels in team fighting, which, guess what? Go figure, kind of confusing them, Varus and Kaisa excel at.
Karis and Vesa.
Yeah, I was getting dyslexic there, but like, yeah, those two actually excel a lot in the team fighting, and we saw him hitting great ultimates, getting good damage with what is it, like the lethal tempo build, where he basically just go get
Yes, yeah, yeah.
played. Yeah, definitely doing fantastic there. And yeah, but like, you put this on the Quinn, and really the only thing if you sign up for a Quinn, you're basically signing up for 1-3-1. Everyone knows that that's basically what you're signing up for, is just split pushing and trying to control the map, which you can't really you can't really do as effect. It's really hard in this meta, considering picks like Shen and Nocturne and Tom Kench exist right now and are very good and prioritized picks. So you have tons of denial there. Haunter was definitely trying to match the 1-3-1. And there was points where he was just going straight Huni and building full damage on, like, just to commit to the split push to make sure that they could match the Quinn. I do want to see that more out of Cloud9 in terms of not so much split pushing, in terms of attempting it, but doing that through the top lane or through Jensen. I think that Sneaky should stay on picks such as Varus or Kaisa, or I mean, what other like team fighting, like maybe stuff like Ashe is doing quite well, or Ezreal, as opposed to
Or Jhin.
or Jhin, yeah, as opposed to, or something that can control a team fight, or turn the tide, as opposed to just, here, you go on an island, you split push, and if you're gonna do that, you have to draft effectively. So you can't really do the support Shen or top Shen. Tom Kench has to go, and even then, you're letting up so many power picks like Akali go through. So I'd rather see them just strict commit to the team fights.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
no,
you
one
go
thing
ahead,
I
Frozen.
kind of, or yeah, just super quick. One thing I kind of want to add is that I'm not sure that Pole Belter is as proficient on Akali as Bjergsen is. So I think in the upcoming series it might be okay to worry about that. But once Worlds comes around, then yeah, I think that is something that we need to look for, because we're not going to lose on Sunday, so we don't have to worry about that. And
Well, we can talk about the upcoming match a little later, but I do want to talk about a few more points on the TSM series. I think everyone individually played great. I don't think, like, even Blaber, though he was struggling, I think he was making the right choices. I think it was mostly just C9's compositions fighting against him, as well as maybe, he is a rookie, so he's, and this is like his first playoff game, so maybe he has a little bit of nerves, so his decisions at times weren't as optimal as when he was playing at the LCS. But I think C9 made like just a fantastic choice to swap in Sven and Golden Blue for games 4 and 5, because at that point TSM's like, okay, we know exactly how C9 wants to play. We're just going to keep pinching the jungle and forcing Blaber on something that's not comfortable. Jensen will then have to play a supportive mid to sort of help mitigate Blaber's reckless tendencies, and will win. But then you put in Sven and Golden Glue, and this is a completely different animal, because Sven is way more experienced than Blaber. He knows exactly how to play a multitude of champions and play with this team. Like, I think he's now proven that he can definitely be the jungler that we need and is not a liability. And, they played, and Sven was doing a great job of controlling the jungle. C9 were just getting turrets and winning, and with the help of a more team-fighting comp, with Sven and Golden Glue having this really great synergy with each other, and everyone getting champions that they're more comfortable with, they just wrecked TSM, and it wasn't even close, I felt, in those final 2 games.
yeah, I was very impressed with how Svenskeren was able to turn back into the highlights that we were hoping to see when we signed him. I will admit I was one of the doubters once we signed him, but I'm glad that it's turned out well so far, and that we're able to work on a Swolskaren kind of lineup, and then a small Jetson kind of lineup. So He looked a lot better. He looked a lot more controlled. The only time I was actually worried was in Game 5 when they made that when Licorice and Svenskeren made that dive kind of early on as Poppy and Graves onto the Ornn when they traded 2 kills for 1 for pretty much no reason. That was pretty much the only time I was extremely concerned about the lineup, except when they were announced to become coming in, because I was admittedly extremely worried about them coming on. So,
and I think to touch on that dive specifically, immediately after, like you saw in the player camps, like Licorice was laughing about it. Like they didn't tilt at all because they fucked up the play. It's sort of, they were able to just hit the reset button and go, okay, our thinking was right. The doing the tower dive was the correct choice. It was just that we played a little bit sloppy because we maybe were trying to proc effects and do stuff that instead of just trying to get the kill, what have you. But they hit the reset button, and after that, they were doing pretty well. And I think Svenskeren, what's benefited Svenskeren so much is that all of his time in Academy. I think that coming from TSM off of really poor performance and just getting kicked out for like Mike Young, who was sort of the flavor of the month and quickly faded into obscurity. He had a lot to prove, and I think that from going immediately from TSM to C9, I think he was trying to do a lot. And I think that's sort of, he looked good initially in spring. Like the first half of the spring, he was looking great. But then I think issues with the team atmosphere and motivation definitely hurt the team. But him going into Academy, I think he was able to just reset himself and just practice on himself and how he plays with a team. And I think that helped him ultimately become a very, formidable strategy.
Yeah, and also the most underrated thing I would say is the fact that Golden Glue actually played the role-playing role that I hadn't really seen him do too much, and the fact that he's usually the kind of guy who just wants to be super Chad in lane, and the fact that he is following up Jensen definitely like kind of has him,
super
you have to,
Chad.
yeah, he has to kind of be that. I mean, you're talking about Jensen, who definitely has a killer instinct in lane. So it's like, how do you follow that? And the fact that Golden Glue is like, you know what? I don't need to do all that. I can just basically play Malzahar, who is basically the definition of role playing in the mid lane, where basically you just press R, go for silences, and you've done your job at that point. And even then, he did quite well. So
He did really well. Golden Glue's job basically was just like, okay, just control mid lane, make sure no one encroaches on our shit, and gets super happy in the mid lane, and he shut that down. Like, I didn't see Grig come anywhere near the mid lane really. Like anytime they spotted Grig out, he was silencing and harassing them with his E, and he was controlling the mid lane, and he was following up when fights were happening, sort of zoning people off just with the threat of the R and forcing everyone to kind of pay the Malzahar tax. So like TSM's gold was kind of fucked even more than it really was. And he did exactly what he needed to do, which is what you need Golden Glue to do. So I can't really complain. But if anyone doesn't have any more comments on the TSM series, I think we can real quick move on to what our expectations are for Team Liquid.
yeah, I think we can move on to Team Liquid because that's a big one.
Yeah, for sure. So that's gonna be this Sunday, and it's gonna be really tough. I think TL is a strong team. We've beaten them twice before this season, or like this summer season, so it's not impossible. If you look at the head-to-head, we beat them. With different roster configurations. I think we need to be careful of just sort of Team Liquid and how they play, because they like to help out Impact because Impact's a really strong top laner. We know this as C9 fans because he was on our team for 2 years. They like to give everything to Double Lift. Everything is on Double Lift. So we have to make sure he doesn't get too ahead and basically just pressure mid lane, because if you can get Jensen or Golden Glue ahead, we can just take over the game. Like what we saw when Sven and Golden Glue played against Team Liquid. Sven camped the shit out of Pull Belter. Golden Glue got insanely far ahead, and the game was basically over.
Yeah. The entire thing is the entire premise of what Team Liquid likes to do is basically just have again, it's whenever you have a team with double if it's basically he's for the most part running the show and calling the shots and how you play around him. This is the case he's very aware of this. This is the case when he was on TSM, when he's on CLG, and even on Team Liquid now. And then you have Pobelter who kind of just plays second fiddle to that, where it's like where for the most part everyone plays second fiddle to that, where it's just you have this guy, and how do we help you carry? It's like it's just they let us help you carry, and that's going to be relatively dangerous considering cap his cap to essentially carry is actually quite high. So you're gonna have a lot of pressure of a sneaky going to bot lane. I don't doubt that he can actually shake off a lot of the pressure because I mean we've actually had times where we put double I mean not double, we put sneaky on an island against double lift and basically we tell him, hey, you got a farm Q on Ezreal this entire game, and you're not going to get a single gank, whereas Smithy's going to gank you like 4 times, and Sneaky's just like, all right, cool, as long as we can as long as we can translate that pressure into something over to like maybe Jensen or Golden if they want to start them, or maybe we put that into Licorice if they're comfortable with him, or who knows, maybe Sneaky's like, you know what, I think I can actually do well in this lane if you guys can actually invest maybe 1 or 2 resources. Nothing too crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see that the top lane matchup's going to be just a grind fest, and really and the fact that it was just nothing but Ornn and other top laners all last series is actually going to make that's where I think will be the tipping point is there in jungle into how much pressure they can counter gank in terms of trying to mess up Team Liquid's plays, along with trying to limit what Doublelift can truly do on this map.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come down to how effective the junglers are. I think we match up slightly better. Xmithy, when we played, I think, with Blaber, Xmithy didn't really know how to handle Blaber's aggression. But I can see TL definitely banning out sort of Blaber's staple picks, like taking away the Kindred, of course, and maybe like Trundle and a couple of things that he's comfortable on. Uh, but I think with Svenskeren is also very smart. He's really good at controlling the early game, and I've praised Svenskeren like all season long. He's really good. He has like really great instincts, and he can really take over the early game. So I think Smithy might have some trouble there because Svenskeren is really good at operating on those instincts.
Yeah, what I'm really worried about is how our playstyle lends more towards focusing the top side of the map. And as Cloud9 fans, we should know that Impact is normally pretty good at absorbing pressure. So we've beaten them twice already. So I'm interested to see how they can handle the pressure. But I think it's about time that we try and swing some of our jungle proximity towards the bottom side of the map, because if we allow a Smithy to control the bottom side of the map, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and basically to the message that I would love to give a lot of the players that are going to be there. I mean, maybe Jensen and Sneaky are used to this, and Svenskeren is, but to Golden Glue, Blaber, Zazel, and Licorice, just letting you know, this is a nearly 20,000 seating arena you're gonna be playing in this weekend, and nerves are kind of the aim of the game right here. So not to make them it sounds like I'm trying to scare them or anything. I'm not trying to do that.
You're
But
gonna psych them out.
I'm not trying to psych them out. I'm confident.
Obviously, they're listening to this too, so
Yeah,
don't psych them out too much.
Yeah, obviously, but I mean, you're talking about a 20,000 seat arena, which is a much different experience than playing in a maybe 150 seat like NALCS studio. So it's gonna be a good experience for them. Hopefully, it'll be positive for them, and that they won't look at this as just what if. And yeah, I'm excited to see what they can do in Oakland this weekend. And actually, I think they just arrived there earlier this afternoon. So
Yeah, they did.
This afternoon, meaning Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't clear, but yeah, for those listening to the VODs, but experience is going to be the name of the game here. But I'm confident that with the coaching staff of Reapered and Rapistar, who've dealt with players who got nervous before, I don't doubt that they can actually help them. I don't doubt that these guys can still keep their calm and collective all all during this weekend, and let's hope for the absolute best. And I think that we actually have a legit shot at this.
Yeah, and with that, I think we can close out with predictions. Dr. Manhattan, let's start with you since you're so enthusiastic. What do you predict?
I will probably have to go in this one that will take it 3-1. I think that Blaber or Sven, no matter who you have, will will match the pressure of Xmithy very well. Not to mention the fact that Sven Skaren's actually a jungler who's always had Xmithy's number, even pre him being on Cloud9. You know, this is back when TSM CLG early days, definitely had his number then. Back when TSM played Immortals, still had some pressure on Xmithy, and now that he's on Cloud9 versus Team Liquid, still knew how to pressure him. So I don't doubt either of them can actually do it. I think that I think that Sneaky will be up to the task, whether we put him on an island or whether we put so much pressure on him. I don't doubt that he's up to task, and I think that this will finally be the year that essentially just will. While the most roller coaster year, I think this will be the year where it proves it was all worth it at the end.
All right, Frozen. What's your prediction?
So I'm kind of torn. I feel like 3-1 isn't like the worst guess in the world. But what I'm kind of expecting is the Swole Bros, SWOL, meaning Svetskarian and Golden Glue, to start out in the best of 5 and win 2 games to put us up 2-0 until we lose 2 games. Oh, maybe 1 game, and then we'll bring in the small brothers, SMOL, meaning Jensen and Blaber, to finish up the series and us winning in a game 5. So honestly, if Reapered wants to prove he's coach of the split, he's got to win this shit. So if we end up not at Worlds, I think it's the most, or I think it's kind of undeserved. So now's the time to prove that we are the best team in North America.
All right. Well, I think it's going to be 3-2. I think it's going to be a pretty back and forth game, but I think that from what C9 has been able to prove in the TSM series, they can adapt and outperform their opponents. Especially now, they seem to be maybe at the strongest they've ever been as a team. I think that's maybe debatable looking at last season with Impact and Contracts. That was also a really good squad. But we'll have to see. I'm hoping, I'm praying. I will definitely be watching the match and just hoping that they play real good. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening, one and all, to Bodied, a Cloud9 fancast. If you have questions or just want to say hi, you can tweet at us at C9Bodied or email us at bodiedfancast@gmail.com. We might answer stuff on the next episode or get to you when we can. Other than that, thank you for listening, and C9 win.
We got this weekend, boys. C9 win.
C9 fucking win. Let's go.
Woo! All right. Bye.
Bye.